Why are Americans unapologetically themselves? I absolutely adore this about Americans, and I'm curious as to why this is the case. From the weirdos to the cool kids, everyone in my college is confident and is not afraid to state their opinions, be themselves on Instagram, and just do their own thing. I love it. But I am curious why this is a thing in America and not other places where I've lived and visited as much. We have a very individualistic culture, while others value conformity and the collective more. I think some of it has to do with being, largely, a nation of immigrants, as well as the Enlightenment-era ideas that were kind of baked into the country at its founding. This is a big thing that surprised me in Europe, especially with regards to racism and cultural identity. America is not perfect, and certainly has its own sad history with racism, and continues to unfortunately deal with. But I'm Europe, it is often on full display. I lived in Italy several years, and the rhetoric in African migrants and Muslims was bad. Normal, nice, lovely people turning into hateful fucks and then reverting back. It was wild. I had a black friend go to Italy, then book a return flight 2 days into her vacation because the harassment was so oppressive there. She travels a lot too, so it must have been above and beyond. I'm a second-generation Filipino-American. I have dealt with this same type of hostility in Ireland and Australia. Both times I've cut my vacation short because of my race, and my GF at the time was white. I can't imagine how much worse it was for your friend who is black. With such a melting pot of cultures, there's no standard of what an American should be, and the inherent concept of individualism over national identity too. There are downsides to a highly individualistic culture, but this is probably an upside. Downsides are: Asian countries that stress the collective over individuality tend to have less tragedy of the commons scenarios. When you think of the collective first, instead of the individual, you tend to want to do things that benefit the collective whole, rather than just yourself. That's much harder to achieve in individualistic societies where "fuck you, got mine," and "greed is good" are not uncommon personal mottos. Yeah, makes sense. My first comment was not meant to be bad. I didn't take it as bad. It's a legitimate question. Everything has upsides and downsides. I love the USA, but I recognize that we have problems, and some of those problems can't really be fixed because of the culture that makes us great. To fix it, you'd have to kill it. Oh, okay, that is good. I wanted to make that clear since I was getting downvoted LOL. I agree. Charles Koch. Probably why we don't have universal healthcare, daycare, and university. Deterioration of community bowling alone, for example. We've watched public health deteriorate in a way more collective nations haven't in the last few years. Vaccines, public masking in situations with vulnerable people, contact tracing, etc. Oh yeah, that was an America fuck yeah moment. I'm not an American, Canadian on a work visa, but I absolutely love this quality of Americans. They say whatever they feel, it's direct and usually from the soul. Take however you like it. I think it's a cultural thing America has preserved. I get all sorts of vibes, good or bad is subjective. But I cherish direct conversation, and Americans being themselves. I'm slowly picking up the art. You'll never be happy pretending to be someone you aren't, and you being the person you want to be is unlikely to hurt anyone. So be yourself and be happy. I'll add to that with a nugget of wisdom from my late grandfather. 90% of the people you meet in life, their opinion of you will never matter. It's the other 10% you should worry about. With all due respect to your grandfather, 90% of those asterisk people can go fuck themselves. That's the way we're raised, honestly. Being yourself and saying what you have to say is pretty much what the US is based on from centuries ago. There is also our intrinsic knowledge that we can't be punished by religion or government for peacefully stating our thoughts and ideas. Instagram is so not a good representation of authentic Americans. We value individualism. Our culture was built on defiance of authority, and so we celebrate it. Even things we find repugnant have been celebrated as individual thought. We like nonconformity. We are a nation built by malcontents and misfits. If they were conformists, they never would have left where they came from. I have zero scientific evidence proving it, but I am confident, see what I did there, that as descendants of those people it is buried in our genetic code. It really is the American DNA. You are absolutely correct. Even if it's not biologically in there, these kinds of things get passed down through generations and it becomes a culture. Ronald Reagan famously said, "You can go to live in France, but you cannot become a Frenchman." You can go to live in Germany or Turkey or Japan, but you cannot become a German, a Turk, or Japanese. But anyone from any corner of the earth can come to live in America and become an American. To me, this is the heart of our country. We are one, from wherever we come. Not all of us are. Source: me, sorry. You're right, though. There are collectivistics, conformist subcultures here too, as well as individuals who are more inhibited. But it's not on a national culture level. We're a plural society. We were built to accept more than one idea. It's the hubris that comes from being able to turn any country into glass on a whim. But actually it's a very individualistic culture that emphasizes being true to yourself. America is about freedom and being whoever you want. The saying is do be whatever you wish, so long as you don't infringe on the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness of others. If you think about it, America was developed and built by the bravest and savviest people from everywhere else. You had to work your ass off and survive, and some risked their lives just for the opportunity to have opportunity. Essentially, we got the best of everywhere else. Those of us who descended from those early settlers have rugged individualism baked in. Everyone is allowed to fly their own freak flag when your great ancestor rode a wooden wagon pulled by oxen 3,000 miles over a trail of rugged emptiness. All this to say that indeed there were already rugged, sturdy people here. Just answering the question as a generalization. Why should I be unapologetically not myself? I can't stand fake people, why should I be one? I just want to say it may appear that way, but there are a whole range of Americans who are not comfortable being themselves. And we have all ranges of anxieties and insecurities just as much as anyone. That said, we also tend to appreciate differences, and we also want to find people with the same interests. So we often advertise our own personalities in some way. It attracts conversation and like-minded people. Are we, though? I guess it depends on where else you've lived and visited. I've heard people say we're considered more individualistic and outspoken, in good or bad ways. And I guess we are to some other countries. I always figured it's pretty normal in Western culture, but then I guess Europeans tend to be a bit more humble. It might just be because you're at college too. You're probably living around young people who are old enough to express themselves but young enough to not be worried about their professional or social reputation. They're probably wealthier and more educated than most other people too, because they got into a competitive school and they're confident that they'll be able to get into a good career instead of just a lot of student debt. American individualism. We're founded on the basis of questioning who rules over us, leading to a culture of questioning that persists well into adulthood. And unlike most of Europe, we don't have an expectation of blood makes you Spanish, or Italian, or British, or Russian. Express the desire for liberty and freedom, and be ready to fight for it, and you're as American as someone born here. See the roof Koreans.